Hello. Welcome to another edition of DevHub Live. Let me clear this out of my face. There we go. Thanks again for joining us here at DevHub Live. Super excited to have you guys all on this episode because this is one that personally as a developer, I'm excited to talk to Timur from Gven Kaya. I hope I'm saying it right, and so he can correct me in a second. But I am really excited about this because as developers, we are constantly bombarded with the issues around security, but how many of us actually take it seriously and actually build with security in mind? And I think we're all guilty of not paying enough attention to that. So really excited about this part. Couple quick housekeeping things. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter already, down below, please sign up for that. All the different updates every week around the near ecosystem and near AI are in that. Definitely check that out. You can get started right away. Just going by to dev.near.org and start building here on Near today. If you have questions during this live stream, feel free to enter them into the comment section or chat of wherever you might be watching this, and we may get to them if they are appropriate. But without any further delay, let's get the show going.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you for coming on
Good,
today.
good. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, excited to be here. So, yeah, I guess let's talk security.
Yeah. Let's start with maybe just a little bit of your background in as a developer in Rust, working in Near, and just I know you've done quite a bit of different things here. So maybe just like a quick overview of what your background
Uh,
is.
yeah, so look, I mean, I spent years in Web2 security before coming to Web3. There, I was mainly working in application security side of things, um, web, code reviews, and all sorts of things around that. Then around 2020, I guess I moved to Web3 security. And in Near ecosystem, I was like since 2021, leading security engineering teams at different security consultancies, doing security reviews, and obviously building some stuff on the side. So like I worked like at one fintech company, then also had experience writing some trading bots. So yeah, I'm pretty accustomed with the whole near tech and everything around security, both Web 2 and Web 3.
What about security kind of got you interested? Like why that specific area of development?
Um, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, back in the days, I was actually planning to become machine learning engineer. Uh, the thing is, back in the days, to become machine learning engineer, everyone was requiring for you to have a PhD. It's not as easy as it right now. So, and I was like, yeah, I mean, what's another job path I can take? And I was good at technical hacking. So I was like, yeah, I mean, let me just put it to a profession.
Sure.
So yeah, so that's basically it. So there's nothing fancy
Yeah.
about it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice. So our audience is fairly more technical. We're geared towards technical, so feel free to get as deep as you want to go as we talk about stuff. But at a very high level, first, what are the when someone says like we're talking about security in software, what is the first thing that should come to mind?
When you talk about security in software, most likely they're talking about application security side of things. By application security side of things, I mean bugs in the code mainly. So it's not about like a network security, which is totally different animal. It's not about people security, let's say phishing engagements. When someone talks about software security, it's usually just application security, bugs in your code, bugs in your configurations, and everything around software. So,
As a developer, where do you recommend people start with all of that? Is it something from like the initial design? Or like where do you send the lead people?
yeah, to start, look, I mean, if you're a developer, you should for sure do your best to move your security to the left side of the spectrum. By left side, I mean in your development pipeline. So earlier you can catch bugs, easier it's to fix, it's cheaper to fix. usually architecture is not solidified enough. So imagine you discovered an architecture breaking bug in production. Okay, good luck. I mean, now you have to spend probably several months fixing it, and for the company, like fixing those type of bugs is going to cost a lot of money because developers are expensive, and instead of developing new features, they're spending their time fixing bugs. So
Right.
the earlier you discover, it's better. So how developers can start learning about security? If you Let's give an example. If you're someone developing in Rust, for instance, you should just basically just like, to be honest, it's actually for any language. You can just Google Python language vulnerabilities, Rust security vulnerabilities. At least get accustomed with the basic common stuff so that you developing with the security in mind. It's already gonna give you a big benefits. If you
Right.
if you're like worried that you don't have time to find it, talk to your CTO, find a security consultancy which can train you and just expense it. So that's also another option that you can do. So that's initial thing that I think every single developer should do, is to learn about common bugs that exist in their software stack. So it's already
Yeah.
going to eliminate a lot of things, and then we can talk about integrating some security toolings in place or doing something else. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great initial approach. Now, for people though, and I started in Web 2 as well, and a lot of different like enterprise stuff, and I think there's two different beasts here. Like if you're working in enterprise, that is one thing, but then I think as an indie developer, and we see a lot more indie developers coming into Web 3, is that something where, as you are working with different projects, that you are changing your approach versus like if it is a larger scale where they have a full team versus maybe 2, 3 people working together?
Uh, usually, it's harder to work with a team which does not have any security personnel in place. It
Mm,
means that you have to be extra careful because you cannot assume anything.
right.
So basically, imagine a startup comes, which basically two developers just learned about near smart contracts yesterday. They developed something, and now they're coming to you for an audit. Good luck. I mean, you have to do your best now. You
Right.
should not assume anything like in terms of security. You should basically dig super deep into every single thing they did uh, to find as many bugs as possible. So obviously, those type of clients are the most, dangerous clients for auditing firms
Mm,
because like auditing firms' reputation relies on how many bugs they catched versus how many bugs they missed. So,
right.
and even worse, if they missed a bug and someone got hacked, it's even more damaging.
Mm,
So usually, what my approach is with those type of startups is that if I see this, I try first to talk to them if they like certain to work with me. Uh, Implement those things first before we begin audit. Write better tests, integrate maybe this tooling, this tooling. Maybe I can give some common vulnerabilities that they can just check out,
yeah.
and then come to an audit. So at least we have some baseline covered.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, with the enterprise, it's a lot easier. Like, I mean, at least for them, in majority of cases that I work with big startups or big enterprises, it's usually like at least we can assume that the baseline is covered. So it makes it
Right. Right. There's usually
easier.
like one security engineer of some sort. Right. So I think I don't want to get just too much into audits yet. I do want to talk a lot about audits, but before we get to that part, so as someone who has worked in both Web 2 and Web 3, what are some of the common things that you see that are maybe different or maybe even similar for someone who is going from Web 2 to now writing smart contracts?
Um, yeah. So if someone Uh, actually, they're both scenarios. I've seen folks who never worked at Web3 and jumped to smart contract development. That's one beast. Another beast is someone who worked at Web3 and moved to worked at Web2, moved to Web3. That's usually better. Let me talk
Hmm.
about first case where you just started with Web3 smart contracts without any knowledge about Web2.
Right.
Uh, the biggest issue is that your brain gets wired to smart contract development, and that's super specific. Like reverts to be like you made a mistake, all the state is reverted magically, all good. I mean, but when that developer goes and tries to code, let's say, some off-chain Web2 component,
Yeah.
I've seen examples when folks basically just assumed that if they've written some data to database and there is error afterwards, database automatically cleared. So
Oh,
because
sure.
so
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, that I always say to folks, I mean, sometimes people coming to me asking, how can I start in Web3? And I know they don't have enough knowledge in just regular Web2. I send them directly to Web2 bootcamp, let's say Web2 bootcamp, or something that they're interested in, to learn about like a Web2 development first before
Yeah.
they can jump into a Web3. Because
Interesting.
it's a lot easier for you to then work and do stuff. Web3 is not only smart contracts. Web3, to be precisely, built on Web2 tooling, Web2 things.
Yeah, sure.
So exactly. So you have to know about this. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry, I drifted apart. What was the
No, you
question
go ahead.
initially? What was the initial
No,
question?
the question was just like the transition from going from Web 2 to Web 3
Yeah,
and what
similarities.
that
Yeah,
means
yeah,
for yeah.
yeah. I mean, about like security similarities is, I mean, you should verify user inputs. That's a common sense. Like in both Web2 and Web3, if you develop smart contracts or you just do Web2 things, you should verify user inputs. That's a basic thing. The difference is that the biggest difference actually that I saw is that in Web3 you sometimes have to care about decentralization. So when you audit smart contracts, you sometimes need to think and let's say report some centralization issues, for instance. In Web2, no one cares. So yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that's the biggest difference I would say. But apart from this, like everything that if you're coming from Web2 security, it's gonna be super easy for you to transition to Web3 security as well, because you already have attacker mindset that you can just apply there. You just have to know how smart contracts work, basically. So if
Right.
we're talking obviously Web3 equals smart contracts, but it's not the case, obviously.
In your experience, in even just you in person preference, but also just from a work standpoint, what are some things around like language choices do you normally recommend to people? And by that I mean not just even like for writing smart contracts, but just in general, what languages do you say? If I had to say, oh, what should I start with? Where do you
Oh,
send people?
uh, I mean, it's super broad question. Like, if are we talking about someone who never coded before
No,
versus
let's assume somebody. I'm proficient in multiple languages, right? So, but
where should I go deeper?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would go to, like, I prefer like in our current state is that if you know multiple things, to use what's the right for the current job. That's the first thing that I think the best approach. But in general, I mean, I would prefer, let's say, if you know Python, JavaScript, and Rust, I would say go deeper in Rust. But if you hate writing in Rust, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, you should, like, I've never seen folks be passionate and going deep into stuff that they don't like. It doesn't matter if Rust is super memory safe. It doesn't matter if Rust is super duper fast. If you just hate the syntax, and I mean, no one gonna actually
Yeah.
care about this. So I cannot give you like a definitive answer. Go with that. But obviously, as a security person, I would say, yeah, dude, doing Rust. At least you're gonna have less headache about memory issues. So
Sure.
like buffer overflows, for instance, or something. Obviously, it's not completely safe, but like a majority of things are prevented by the compiler.
Yeah. No, I think that I mean I like that answer because it's something, I think even for myself I sometimes struggle with of trying to sometimes pick like what I think the right language is for something. but I've certainly learned over the years that it is sometimes better to pick the language I am more comfortable with and I am
Yep.
stronger at, because I am probably less likely to make mistakes using that language versus trying to force myself to do something different.
Yep, exactly. Like, I mean, when people say, give a comparison between, you should not learn Rust. I mean, it's super hard for you to code. If you in the phase of prototyping, I use JavaScript or something else. But I'm pretty sure if someone is more comfortable or more expert writing Rust versus someone who is more comfortable writing JavaScript, that Rust person is going to write faster and more safe software than that person in JavaScript.
Right.
Because so, I mean, there are folks who can write most likely web application faster than you in C++ than you in JavaScript. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it depends on what language you're most comfortable with. I'm not all like, uh, I have my own preferences. I like type safe languages. I coded in JavaScript. I coded in Python, but now since I coded, let's say, like plenty of years in Rust. Now, when I go to JavaScript, I get anxiety, and if I need to audit some JavaScript code, I get extra paranoid. So,
Yeah, I saw you had posted a tweet the other day about smart contract choices and language choices, because Near now offers so many choices to do contracts in, and I think you made the funny comment something right. Choose whatever, just don't choose JavaScript.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I mean, we if we assume that smart contracts are super like a source of truth, they have to be reliable. I mean, they have to be fast. They have to be don't occupy a lot of space. I mean, what are we talking? Like, I mean, with I don't know, like, what's your experience writing JavaScript, but it has so many foot cons that
Mm,
I don't think it's worth writing any, let's say, production grade software, especially which manages gazillion number of funds in your smart contract. So,
yeah,
uh, as Vlad, I guess, Frolov said, like he also commented on my tweet. He said like maybe it can be used well for prototyping or hackathons. So yeah, I mean that's totally fine. I mean, if you just quickly want to, if you only know JavaScript, let's say,
sure,
and you
sure.
want to just get gist, like I have an idea, I need to go to hackathon, I need to code something quickly. Yeah, just pick JavaScript, code it. But then if you raised funds or you have more time, just you can recode it to
Yeah,
more to a better language.
that's interesting. Yeah, no, I do appreciate that approach to it. For yourself, and let's kind of pivot more into some of the work that you actually do. When somebody comes to you to do an audit, whether it's the full platform, the smart contract, whatever it might be, is one of the, I mean, I got to imagine as just an auditor, when you're dealing with something like JavaScript that has so many frameworks, so many additional packages that can go into it. I mean, does like that must add to the nightmare to just to begin with, because of how do you stay on top of all of that as an auditor?
I mean, that's hard. I mean, that's why we prefer to specialize.
Yeah.
We don't do solidity.
Hmm.
We want to specialize as much as we can. Like we're doing near almost exclusively for like I founded this firm in 2024. I would say like 95% of audits were near audits on our side because we want to specialize there and just deliver the best quality we can. Because as you said, like it's super hard to be on top of everything.
Hmm.
This year we got more folks who specialize in other things as well. So because I don't believe that a single person can specialize on, let's say, 5 6 things at the same time,
Right.
and it's super important, like for a security researcher, um, to be like, I would say, uh, if not better than a developer in some sense in some of the things that you audit, because developers sometimes develop something because like in a certain way develop something because there is, let's say, pressure to release something fast or do something, let's say they're just inexperienced, there is an MVP that they're trying to push. I mean, there are all sorts of things, but you should be let's say, know at least as much as a senior or lead engineer in any ecosystem to
Hmm.
be actually successful security researcher. That's what I think.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that. Of like how do you, though, as the auditor, and I do want to get into the audit process in a second here, but how do you even just like keep up with what's happening? Like, you're trying to do your job as a security researcher and auditor, yet you probably have to spend time like actually programming as well.
Um, I mean, not necessarily. Not
Hmm.
every auditor actually programs on their daytime. I mean, sometimes we like to develop some tooling internally. That's the only time we code, or if you have some different interest. But in general, we just stay, let's say, in example in near I'm in almost every single near Telegram group, so that I
Hmm.
can keep check what's happening right now, what's something new released. Maybe there is some new functionality in smart contract that was released. Let's say the recently, like, yield and resume functionality was released like pretty recently, which
Right.
lets you basically just to stop the contract execution. Let's say ask LLM to do something, then you get response, and boom, it's inside of smart contract. That was a new functionality that I had to just check it out, learned by myself. Didn't haven't seen anyone use it yet, but I mean, still, if I encounter it now, I know what it does. So
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So it's not as even just so once you have that baseline of, okay, I'm at this level of, being a software engineer, I feel comfortable with this. Now it's just keeping up,
yep.
what's new, what's changing. Okay, latest SDK, what's changed in this, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, exactly. Like I've seen like now, Year is releasing like Python and Go SDKs. I don't like, right now. Most probably, you won't see any projects using them because it's not in production yet, not stable. But I'm pretty sure, like in, let's say, next year, there will be projects already writing in Go SDK
Right.
and Python SDK. So we have to also get prepared. So we're just keeping an eye on that part as well. So maybe not that involved yet, but the closer it gets to a stable release, we're gonna start experimenting there as well.
Nice, nice. Let's talk a little bit about the actual audit process. I think for a lot of developers, especially independent ones, it sounds like a scary term. If you've never been through it, I think there's a lot of mystery of like what actually happens. So maybe kind of walk through like what it's like to, you know, engage with the security team and start the audit process, what that looks like for someone.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's developers should not get scared to get audited. I actually think auditing is not the, the most correct term for it. I guess security review is better, because there is no like a you failed or pass inside of audit. We
Hmm.
are here for you, like we are here to make your software better. Uh, and actually, I've experienced this mentality in some security auditors in general. They have us versus them mentality. It means
Hmm.
that we are against developers, we're against engineers. That's not how it's supposed to be. You are always in a team with developers there. You, your job is to actually secure the system. So when you have mentality of us versus them, uh, you start arguing about severities, which degrades the user experience, sorry, like experience with the client. Um, you try to over exaggerate severities also. Let's say
Sure.
something at most medium, you try to push it to critical just because it's gonna please your boss. That's Yeah, you should just care about providing as much value as you can to your client. That's the main thing about the whole process. Pretty simple. Like, let's say you need an audit. You say you want to audit staking smart contract on near. What we ask from you at first is, yeah, can you send us some documentation and the code so that we can review? Because we cannot do anything before we saw the code, because we need to estimate the size of the code
Hmm.
base and its complexity. Because even sometimes, even if the size is large but complexity is small, we can finish it relatively quick. So, or if there is something we are super experts about, we can just also finish it relatively quickly.
Sure.
um, yeah, then afterwards we just simply prepare a quote, just let's say cost, time, when we can start, and all sorts of details about like who's going to be auditing. That's also super important. How many auditors are going to be inside of your engagement? Is it 1, 2, 3? Pricing also differs depending on how many auditors are going to be there, but usually more complex the code, more auditors are going to be there. And then on the start date, when we actually agreed on a start date, and they agreed on everything, we signed all the papers. I mean, regular stuff like audit agreements, NDAs, and stuff. And then we, on the start date, we gather all together in a single, let's say, Slack channel or Telegram group, and then we begin an audit. And during the audit, like that, it super differs from the company to company. So I will just give you the generalized process. It's usually we have a separate internal group of auditors who's working on a client. And in that internal, we actually discuss all the vulnerabilities, discuss what we found so far, trying to verify them. Nothing worse is, let's say, report something to a client and it's false positive. So because it actually damages trust in you,
Sure.
and also like you don't like developers do not want to spend their time also verifying like they spend time verifying your issue and then figuring and seeing that it's false positive. I mean it's just a waste of time for them in many cases.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean that's pretty much it. Like after we like how we do it, we directly report every single issue inside of the Telegram channel or Slack. We don't wait until the report is finished. The reason behind this is that we want developers to fix issues right away so that the whole process is more streamlined. Because imagine otherwise there is like a dead silence inside of the channel, and then we deliver the report, and now developers have to fix it all together for, let's say, whatever, like a week or something. Then we have to verify fix. But if everything streamlined, we discover the report, they fix, we check the fix, done. And if you do it like this, usually all the auditing and the security review becomes more collaborative, and we can just deliver results faster.
Interesting.
So that's pretty much it. There is no magic, but actual audit, what's happening, it again depends on the methods of the security researchers. Usually it's just a manual code review. Sometimes, let's say, if we discovered something we are not sure about, we will write proof of concept to actually verify the issue. Sometimes if we need it, we use fuzzing. If we have some internal automated tooling developed, we use those. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Interesting. So a couple of things here. So what is your I guess process around remediation? So you said you kind of give them bugs as you go, you give them a final report. Is the remediation and then re-review process built into that initial engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be a standard. Like, we do it. Like, we obviously we do it free of charge, and I believe it has to be a standard across every single auditing firm, because that's your job to verify the fix of a developer. You submit an issue, developer fixed it. Now you have to verify the fix to ensure that developer fixed it correctly. Or did not introduce another bug, because like a development, you fixed one bug, you introduced two. So
right.
That's what I think has to be a standard. And I think actually the majority of auditing firms do it, and I don't think you should work with a firm that does not do it. So
yeah, that makes sense. How important is the documentation piece in getting started? Because I certainly know that is sometimes a point of contention for developers.
I mean, it's a lot harder to work with a project which does not have any documentation. It's not only about architecture, also documentation to launch, or run tests, do something around that, because more auditors spend time debugging your application, figuring out how to launch it, or launch tests or write a POC or do something around that, less time they have to actually audit it. Black hats, folks in the wild have unlimited time to actually audit your project. They can
Right.
just spend their whole day doing this. We have only maybe a week or two to do this, so we have to just do as much as we can and find as much as we can in that short time period.
Some people sometimes are concerned about if they're working on something sensitive of exposing their code. Obviously, you guys are a trusted source, but people still might be apprehensive. What does that process look like in actually handing over code to you?
Like in general, I mean, it's a common practice. I mean, we sign a lot of papers so that it's at least legally we both sides are protected. So I mean, if we leak something, it's I mean, it's going to be disaster for us.
Right.
So, but usually, I mean, how code is handled, it's we have a separate, let's say, user inside of the GitHub, GitLab that those folks can add as a collaborator to the repo, and then we can actually see the code base. And obviously, that user that we have is protected by YubiKeys and all sorts of stuff, and only some of the engineers have access there. So we take it super seriously.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's much improved. Years ago, even though GitHub was around, I remember having to do an audit at a Web2 company, and we had to like deliver the code securely to like an escrow service, and then like it was a whole nightmare. So I'm glad it's as simple as just adding a user to GitHub.
Yeah. Now it's way easier. So
Yeah.
it's yeah.
For sure. We actually got a couple questions here, and so I'll pull this first one up. I wasn't really going to say a question, but I thought this was an interesting comment. You were talking about false positives and negatives, and Red Slime was saying, as a dev, I'd rather get 10 few false positives than one false negative, especially if the code base is complex and touches other code that's out of scope. What are your thoughts
Yeah,
there?
I mean, if the false negative is critical, yes,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I mean, totally. I mean, if it doesn't matter how many invalids you send, if you discover critical vulnerability that can drain your code, just drain your funds, yes, I mean, obviously. But if that false negative was like some low or medium issue, most likely you did more damage to your relationship with the client with 10 false positives. So so they're going to be like, are they even know what they're doing? Like, did they even understand the code base? And I don't think if a security engineer sent you a report with 10 false positives, that engineer is capable of finding you critical issues. The most probably that engineer didn't understand your code base.
Interesting. Yep. That's an interesting perspective. So, what is the threshold that you feel is worth the time and cost to go have a security review? Like, if I just have like an NFT minting contract, is that something where you say, well, you're not a great candidate for this? Is it really more around the use of funds? Like, where do you kind of draw the line for people?
You mean like whether it's actually applicable for them to get an audit, or more around like a
Yes.
cost time wise?
Yeah, I guess both. We'll take it both
I
through.
mean, what I say is like you should doesn't matter if I mean in general every single smart contract I believe has to get audited, especially if it's actually managing some funds. I mean, usually like if you're building a smart contract, most likely handle some sort of sensitive information, or maybe it's emitting some event that some off-chain component picks up and does something that's also critical. So that's I believe every single smart contract has to get audited. um, and when it comes to cost and time, look, I mean, audits are expensive in general. I won't be saying it's cheap in majority of cases.
Right.
So you should um, luckily on Near and other like Polkadot, and I guess there are some others, ecosystems actually support you getting an audit, meaning they can actually sponsor you in some sense. So they usually have some form that you have to fill, submit it, and then if they think that you're worth sponsoring, they can sponsor you.
Makes
Um,
sense.
but in general, you should, if you don't have enough money, what I suggest you to do, browse through some audit competition websites. Let's say Code Arena, Sherlock, there was Hats, uh, Immunify. Find solo auditors and talk to them. Those are usually cheaper rather than going to a firm. Maybe I'm just,
Interesting.
maybe it's I'm playing against myself, but I mean it's just the truth. Usually, it's
Yeah,
if you're working with a solo person, it's going to be cheaper, and if you find a super nice person, um, yeah, and especially if your code base is not super big, it might be worth it for you to
hmm
hire a solo person rather than going to a firm.
sure, makes sense. I mean, are there is the tooling and everything mature enough in Web3 to start using some static tools if you cannot afford, because that's kind of like where I think a lot of stuff in like Web2 is gone.
Yeah.
And it's not always perfect by any means. Like, I mean, I've had these a few that are kind of dicey, but at least that's something like that's some security checkups, right? Is
Um,
that even remotely mature enough in Web3 yet?
Look, I mean, my take here is that we are light years behind Web 2 when it comes to security tooling. So, and I'm not talking about like just even the basic static analyzers do not exist in majority of ecosystems. Like on Near, there is no like a static analyzer. There's one static analyzer. I won't be saying a name, but I mean, it was the last commit was 1.5 years ago. So I
Right.
mean, what are we talking about? So that's our current state. EVM ecosystems are a bit better because they were like around longer usually. So
Sure.
tooling around Solidity and everything is a bit better. They have like some formal verification tooling and all sorts of stuff. Even then, even there, they are not like a super enterprise grade security solutions with a nice UX, UI, like with all the sorts of integrations. Like I'm coming from in Web2 from Invicti Security. So basically, folks who develop NetSpark or NetUnetics, and those are, I would say, stand de facto the best web application scanners that used by Apple, Amazon, and all sorts of big
Sure.
tech
Yeah. Yeah.
companies. And the amount of time folks spend there figuring out how to make the tool not only performant, not only to find you all the issues, but at the same time user friendly, so that developers do not have to spend ages configuring it, is immense. So we
Sure.
should basically also put that attention to Web3 side as well, because especially if we had those toolings, and let's say a tool which basically discovers all the vulnerability, low false positive rate, because no one's going to be using a tool with a high false positive rate, because like the whole idea behind this is that you basically it gives you all the issues with low amount of noise. You go
hmm
through them, all are valid, you fix them, because if it spits you a lot of noise, it's going to be like I'm not going to even bother like reading through everything.
Sure.
So if we had those, at least when they reach the auditing stage, hopefully majority of the common bugs could be found like in development. Access control bugs, I believe, can be automated, like 99% of them, especially if we can integrate AI into that part. um, those can be just directly eliminated at the development stage. And when we actually reach the auditing part, now it's going to be easier for auditors, because we at least know that the basic common bugs are not there. We
Baseline's
can,
there. Right.
yeah, we can actually focus on more like complex ones.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I mean that's my take. Like we need to do better as an industry when it comes to security tooling. Some of them are developed as proof of concepts. Maybe they took a grant from some ecosystem, developed it, and then abandoned it. So yeah, that's not how it should be.
No.
So
No. 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 Yeah. I want to. You mentioned. Yeah. I'd like to pivot a little bit, and one of the watchers, listeners, actually brought up a good question here. What's your take on like AI no code platforms? So I mean, so many developers now are leveraging AI to write code. I certainly do it. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, AI is super nice when it comes to doing something quickly. It's. I mean, I won't be saying I also written some AI with some things with AI. Especially, let's say I want to quickly write some tests. I can say like, can you just build me like a baseline test so that I can just tweak around them?
Absolutely, it's
Amazing.
absolutely fantastic. I hate writing tests, so so at least it giving me baseline tests has been a game changer because I hated writing tests, and so often I would skip writing tests.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, look, I mean, it's good,
yeah,
but at the same time, it sometimes can introduce some bugs because it's not like aware of everything.
mm,
So you should, and usually that's what I also got experienced from some folks that I talk to who use AI a lot and stuff. Is that you can start developing pretty quickly, but at the when you reach certain point, it actually gives you some, um, let's say, a buggy code, so to say. And if you
yep,
experience some bug and you're already deep down into AI development, then you have no idea what's happening in your code base. It's hard for you to then debug. And debugging with AI is pretty hard.
hmm,
It's like you share with it a bug, it gives you some solution. It's also incorrect. Then you're just spinning in that loop.
yep,
So I mean, my take is that it's fine for simple things, but I mean, if you want to start, you can start with AI, do MVP, then just rewrite it, or just build something on top of it, or just rewrite some parts of it to make them more stable. Security wise, I mean, I don't trust it.
hmm.
So there were actually some research papers around. Basically, there is like before AI actually outputs your code, it gets scanned. So, and then if there was a mistake, it prompts back the AI to actually fix it. And at the end, you only get the code which actually been scanned by some sort of
Oh,
tooling
interesting.
behind those.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Like my take on AI and no code, it can be used. Maybe some simple, let's say, fungible tokens that have a structure which is already set.
Hmm.
Um, so you can just build like a ERC20 or an EAP token just directly by telling AI to do it, and then afterwards you can just quickly glance over it and
Right.
maybe fix some small bugs. I mean, usually there is already a standard how you should write it. But if you want
Sure.
to build something custom, it's going to be harder and most likely more buggy approach. So.
Is that something you're seeing in your work of more code that like you can kind of tell like it's coming from AI, or is that something that is coming up more and more?
Um, I mean, I'm usually when I'm auditing, I'm not thinking where it's coming from. I just trying to find bugs. But sometimes it's. I mean, if since I'm worked a bit with AI, I can sometimes like get that smell of AI
Mm.
there. Sometimes like excessive commenting on every single line. That's the
I was
one
the
side.
commenting might give it away. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so it's a kind of like a one like a big kind of smell that was generated by AI. Actually,
yeah.
one time during an audit, I was like thinking, how can I better? Basically, sometimes when you do an audit, you want to show a snippet of the code as a remediation, and I was
Mm.
like, yeah, I mean, let me try basically do it with AI. I was like, yeah, I mean, just prompted like, do can you give me suggestions how to make it better? Let's say
Yep.
this part of the code. It spit out some example how it can be made better. But then I was like, yeah, I mean, never mind. I'll just give the general suggestions because usually when you give a snippet of the remediation to developer, uh, you technically like it's a best practice not to code for your developer because
Hmm.
uh, like the worst case that can happen, you introduce bugs in your remediation, developer copied it, and now technically that's you who to blame. So I was like, no, I'm not going to add it. I just added some remediation, just the notes. And
Yeah.
then when I saw the fix, uh, I saw almost the identical code to the one that I copied on the AI, through the AI.
That's,
So I was like, yeah, I've seen this before somewhere. I didn't say
right.
anything, but I mean, I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, right. No, that's funny. So I think I kind of know what your thoughts are going to be on this, but I'm just kind of curious, just from a philosophical standpoint of like where AI is now and maybe where it is maybe in the next year or so. But it does feel like while it is certainly able to do a lot of coding, it is really only beneficial as a tool for those who are fairly proficient already, where I can be able to look at that code and realize there is something wrong, realize when it makes a suggestion that I can correct it. When you're just actually just relying solely on the AI, if you are, I'll say like unskilled, and giant air quote,
Yeah.
unskilled in that, that it really is not quite at that point to trust in any form.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be painful, I guess, especially when you encounter a bug and you have no idea what's happening. Because if you're a developer and you encounter a bug, you can create a prompt that actually going to give you a higher success rate rather than someone who doesn't know anything. Probably the
Yep.
person who doesn't know anything, they're going to just copy and paste error code, throw it to AI and going to be like, fix it. So, yeah, I mean, it's my take on this is that again, just sure, if I mean, especially it's like with non-technical founders, I would say, if you just want to show something, build a POC of something,
Sure.
uh,
Makes
yeah,
sense.
just use it. Okay, that's fine. I don't think you're gonna be, if you raise money, gonna be doing it any longer. You're probably gonna hire some developers who are actually gonna code it for you. So I
Yeah.
mean that's fine for that case, but I don't think like a purely AI written software is gonna be. I mean, it's gonna be the most reliable one to work
Mhm.
with. That's my take.
As it gets better and as AI becomes more a part of everything that we're doing, like just from your own expertise, what would you recommend a student, in college and university wanting to maybe be a software engineer, like what should they be learning? What should they be focusing on? Is it still just the traditional stuff that you need, or is it more architecture? Is it like where does that start to go, you think?
I would say if you're in college, I made that mistake. I skipped all the foundations of computer science, how computers work, how memory work, how stack work, how heap works. And then actually a bit longer into my career, I realized my gaps and became pretty painful for me to just do some more low level stuff
Mm.
that are required from me. So when you're in college, I mean, just learn those foundations. Don't expect the college to give you any like direct skills that you can apply to your job. No one's going to most likely teach you React or I don't know, like a
Right,
smart
of
contract
course. Yeah,
development, yeah, in the university. But what I feel like is good is that when you have those foundations of computer science, of let's say how computers work, maybe you have learned a bit more assembly, C++ or whatever. If you put someone from the boot camp who just learned all the React or everything, they're obviously going to be more employable. They're going to just start working directly. But since you know all those foundations, all the low level stuff, how actually you can you can progress faster than that person from the boot camp. Most likely, you're going to reach that level of expertise that that bootcamp guy gained in a matter of like 1 year, and that
yeah.
person took 2 years because you have all the foundations. You can debug things easier. You're most likely going to know how React works behind the scenes, and if you read the paper how React works behind the scenes, most likely you're going to understand it.
Right.
So it's like you're going to become a better engineer overall.
Sure,
So
sure.
And that's from my experience. I made that mistake, and I'm still trying to learn as much as I can of that
Yeah.
world. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's great advice. Especially I see similar gaps. I'm a self-taught. I went to school for something different. So as a
Yeah.
self-taught developer, I
Yep.
mean, I've been doing it since I was a kid, but still, like there's still these gaps of right. You said like of some of those foundational things that you miss. I've also found myself telling more younger developers to understand software patterns and software like design
Yep.
because is if you're going to start outsourcing more of your actual like coding to AI, the the software development and patterns become so much more critical in how you then prompt and how you put the stuff together
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. I mean, whether you want to use like a builder pattern or something else, like it's yeah. I mean, at least you will know what you're gonna get as an output. I mean,
Right.
that's actually, yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I agree with this. Like also, like I mean, there is another topic which is like AI in security. That's also been super popular. I don't know if you heard about this. There are
No,
some,
yeah. Well, what's that?
yeah, I mean, it's like like everyone building AI agents right now.
Hmm.
So and it's been super popular. I mean, it's getting to that direction where folks are trying to build AI security agents to scan and attempt, let's say, go to auditing competitions and win there. Um, but I mean, it's like from my experience working with the AI in security, it's not there yet, like whatsoever. Like it's
Hmm.
I tried discovering vulnerabilities with AI with just directly prompting, like real story, like a super recent audit. I discovered directly, it's a Web2 application, discovered like a SQL injection. Just, like there is like a SQL query and you can inject some random things to it to do some actions in the database. I directly saw it and was like, yeah, can AI actually detect it? I would just directly copy the snippet of the code and it just told me like, no, there is no SQL injections there. I was like, okay, fine. Um,
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
we are probably safe there, like as a security researchers for at least another 5 years. But then I
Right.
was like, okay, I told them there is SQL injection. Can you prepare me a payload that actually gonna do something on a database? Let's say make database sleep for 30 seconds. I've written this payload in like say 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Then it just spit me one example. It's wrong. Another example. It took it like a 20 or 30 prompts for me to get it right. So it was like,
Interesting.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, AI is definitely not there in terms of security, and it's probably
Yeah.
going to spit a lot of false positives to developers. So yeah, I mean, don't purely rely on AI in security. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's really great advice. And I hopefully for people who are watching and they start to think about their own security, it really sounds like you know that getting started in your own understanding is really like step one. Like
Yeah.
you as the developer being able to understand what is actually on the screen is really step one. And then if you can go from there, then start thinking about how do I write tests? When I get an audit, how do I start to do the remediation and understand like what, I think that the problem maybe that some people also get worried about is like, will I understand what is being told to me in the report? Do I understand what it means that this doesn't work, and that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, look. I mean, we as security researchers, we are doing our best to make reports as clear as possible with clear impacts. So it's like what's gonna happen if you don't fix this.
yeah,
So sometimes that impact is super like possible, meaning that I mean, and obviously depending on that impact, if it's like maybe gonna fire once in 20 years, then the severity is gonna be most likely informational or just low severity. But we are
yeah,
doing our best to make the reports as clear as possible for developers to consume. And obviously, like no one is leaving the chat when we submit the report. So we are there to answer all the questions for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. This was super helpful. Before we go, any kind of last thing that people should just be aware of? Like follow. I have your Twitter down below. They should follow you guys and what you guys are doing. But any things you want to end on?
Yeah, I mean, look, what I would like to end on is that as I started in the beginning and stated in the beginning, every developer here should learn the basics of security, basics of common vulnerabilities, learn them. You're gonna thank me later. Your developers are gonna thank you as well. Sorry, your auditors are gonna thank you as well, because you're gonna have all the baselines covered, and it's not that it's not that hard. It's just, let's say, basic access control issues. Just double check that you actually added that parameter to prevent someone from calling your smart contract. And another one, write tests. Have tests. Like, I've seen code bases without any tests, and you and it was a big smart contract. So you should have tests and learn about security and just the security auditing in general.
Awesome, great advice. I really appreciate your time today.
Likewise.
This is I hope a lot of people learned something from this, and yeah, and again, we'll certainly see you around the near ecosystem, and hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me. Have a nice one.
Take care. Thanks, Timur. That was great, guys. I learned new stuff. I love talking about just what it is to actually build software. So I hope you guys learned something too. We have so much more great content coming. So a couple updates real quick. We have a workshop this afternoon with some people from the proximity team. So that's going to be exciting. That's going to be in just about an hour from now. So we'll be live back on these same channels that you can come join and do some coding with us. Tomorrow we're doing a kickoff for the Trillion Agent Hackathon. So we will be announcing that. We will be live there. We have some great guests for that one. So that's going to be jam-packed full of information and stuff for the hackathon. And just in general, again, reach out to us if you have topics that you want to see on here. You want to bring things up. You're more welcome to reach out to us. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. We have updates about all that as well. And next week on Thursday's DevHub Live, we have Nightly Wallet coming on to talk about their wallet and building on Near, building on other chains. We're going to talk about all kinds of awesome stuff. So make sure you follow along for that as well. But until then, this has been another great episode of DevHub Live, and we will be back here soon.